A lot of people talk about all the wonderful things about investing in multifamily property, but what are the risks that you should be aware of? And we're going to talk about that here. So, of course, the number one rule in real estate is never lose money. But you have to realize that there's a couple of major factors to watch out for, which will help you honor rule number one, which is never lose money. And that first rule is really that you need to be aware that properties can go down in value. So you need to analyze what the effects of macroeconomics are around the region of the property you're buying. So, for example, some markets will see a huge increase in supply, and maybe there's a boom of, like, for instance, in Florida, a lot of people moving there over COVID. Market shot way up, but then the market also came significantly down because there were so many people pouring into the region at one time and not enough fundamentals to support it over the long term. So you want to think about kind of the supply and demand dynamic and analyze really if that's a market that's going to be stable and not lose value in the future. So traditionally, markets that go up and down are ones that you need to be real careful about, but there's some markets that have been much more stable in value. Those are typically like the Northeast and kind of the central heartland of the US. Those areas have historically been more stable and would be less affected by kind of the boom and bust that you see in a lot of the Sun Belt region. So being aware of the potential for the property to decrease in value is number one. Number two would be the risk of the property actually physically being destroyed. And this could be any type of natural disaster, hurricanes, fires, but floods have really become a major factor, and not just in areas that are physically close to the ocean, but anywhere where you might have a flash flood and a property that's affected by flooding. Flood insurance premiums have gone up a lot. Flood areas have actually gotten increased as a result of that. So it's really important to be aware that physically, if your property can be damaged, while you might have insurance, it could still have lost income, could potentially be affected negatively long term. If you have to have flood insurance on a long-term basis that's much higher than you originally anticipated for, that will hurt your property value from an underwriting basis going forward. So really be aware of the physical dynamics of what could affect your property value. And then the third one is that if your cash flow goes negative, which sometimes does happen, how long can you sustain that? And is that something that is temporary or long term? So for example, if you financed a property at the low interest rates of 3 and 4% that we saw around the COVID era, and then you have to refinance into a much higher 7, maybe 7.5% interest rate. So that interest rate doubles, which of course is going to cut your cash flow dramatically. So make sure that if you are getting a great interest rate, that you stress test it for down the road when that interest rate very likely is not going to be as low. And just be careful about not to make sure that you have enough allotment for your debt service, but also just repairs and maintenance. A lot of owners I see underestimate how much repairs and maintenance are going to cost. So make sure that you're putting away reserves for those things, and don't get caught off guard by having a lot of repairs and maintenance and getting in a position where your cash flow goes negative. So be aware of those three major rules in evaluating the risk for your property. And if you do that, you'll be a long way to having a profitable investment.